All right, Knowles. Oh, I can see you. My
Hey,
goodness.
I made it back.
You made it. How you doing? I know, it's amazing technology we have here. It's
Yeah,
just,
thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
You know, I felt a little guilty sending you this. You kind of feel you're kind of in the same place as me with superhero movies in general. Is that fair to say?
I like when you call me and you say, you know, Knowles, I really hate superhero movies, and I think they're distressing for the culture. So you should go see it. I said, Drew, you know, I don't disagree with that really at all.
I don't know if you could hear me. That somebody wrote to me and said I was not treating you kindly. I don't know how you would even recognize me if I treated you kindly.
That's true. It would be too shocking. I might just die or turn into a pillar of salt or something. I say this all the time. I get no respect. No respect, I tell you. I tell you to sweet little Elisa, everybody. That's okay. I'm a living martyr like Alan Esther.
All right. Now I heard a lot of different reactions, but how'd you like the movie?
The movie was so awful.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I went to see this movie, and I was there. I dragged sweet little Elisa to it, and about an hour and a half in, I'm somehow still awake, and the power goes out. And I have never been more grateful for a blown fuse in my entire life. So I walk out and I say, oh, I think I got the gist of this thing. I don't think I need to see it again. But they give me a couple free tickets and I say, okay, well, if I'm going to review it, I guess I have to see the last 17 hours of this thing that never ended.
You had to go to the movie twice?
I had to go to it twice, which is evidence of God's whimsy. Clearly, you know, suffering. This is Lent. This is a penitential time.
Exactly.
And I had quite a spiritual discipline this weekend.
So it's a blackout at Black Panther.
Exactly.
You just don't like black things. Am I getting that right? Yeah. Okay.
You know, it's so tough because this movie is explicitly about race. And so any commentary on it is a commentary on history and race and colonialism and things like that. And so you get called a racist regardless of what you say.
Right.
The movie is explicitly about race, though. Some people have wondered about the connection between Black Panther and the Black Panther Party.
Yeah.
Now, they both came out in the same year. The name Black Panther was used to describe proto-Black Panther Party organizations for at least a year before that. The comic creators acknowledged this, and they said, oh yeah, what a strange coincidence. And then in 1971, they actually, when the Black Panther Party was getting a lot of negative press for carrying machine guns and stuff like that, they changed the name briefly to something else, Black Leopard, I think, and then they went back to Black Panther.
So they didn't actually name it after the Black Panther group?
So they say. I mean, the name, referring to the proto-Black Panther parties as the Black Panthers predates the comic book by at least a year. There was also the Black Panther Tank Division in World War II.
And there are such things as Black Panthers.
And there are Black Panthers. So it seems a little coincidental, as the comic creators admit. But the whole premise of this movie is that if whites and, you know, Western Europeans had not colonized parts of Africa, if it remained untouched from Africa, and if African countries were rich in natural resources like precious metals, then they would have developed into an equitable, fair, just, prosperous, technologically advanced country in total isolation, right? Now, the great irony of this is I wrote this review and I said it was awful, and Ben said it was very good.
Yes.
But we actually agree on most of the movie. We just disagree on this one point. Ben wrote that colonialism was an unjustifiable evil.
Really?
And I don't think that's true at all. I think if you go into this believing that historically Western interactions with the rest of the world have been a good for everybody, then this movie doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If you go in thinking that colonialism is an unjustifiable evil, then the only things that will make you dislike this movie are the cheesy special effects and the terrible plot and absolutely having no stakes whatsoever because we know exactly what's going to happen because these all follow the exact same formula.
Well, colonialism, like every human enterprise, contained evil. People did evil things in the name of colonialism, but it also spread civilization, whether it was Romans doing it or the British doing it, places where those civilizations touched are actually better off than they might have been without them. I mean, definitely terrible, terrible things happen during colonialism, but we're human beings. Terrible things happen wherever we go.
The imagination of man's heart is evil from the beginning. That's certainly true. But the initial dispute of the movie, the initial debate, is one between isolationism and intervention with oppressed Black people around the world. But then the latter debate of the movie becomes, we will intervene. Do we intervene through militancy, or do we intervene, I kid you not, through extra community centers in Oakland? That's the final suggestion.
That's a tough one, yeah. Okay.
That's a tough one. But the premise of European culpability for global inequality is accepted by the protagonist and the antagonist. But the history shows a different story. So the idea that Europeans brought slavery to Africa is ridiculous. Slavery in Africa predates European colonialism by millennia. And ironically, the only thing that's led to any abolition of slavery in Africa was European colonialism.
Right.
So when for instance, when the English intervened in the Sokoto Caliphate in 1903, it's a Muslim caliphate in northern Nigeria, 2.5 million people were enslaved there. Within just a few decades of British rule, slavery was abolished everywhere. Whole pre-European African empires were built on the trans-Saharan slave trade. The Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, totally built on that. We know that the Egyptians held slaves, right? There's a couple good books written about that. So the premise of the movie doesn't make any sense, and therefore, if you think that the trouble with superhero movies is that the plots are too coherent and they're insufficiently political, then you're going to love Black Panther. But that's just the criticism of the premise of the movie, which doesn't make any sense. There's also the issue of the genre itself, which is so saturated.
Hey, before we get to that, because I do want to talk about that. But before we get to that, the God King of the Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring, he who must be obeyed, was in here briefly, and he said that in the movie that this country, Wakanda or whatever it's called, develops Western civilization without the help of Western civilization, but they do get extraplanetary help, like aliens drop something. Is that right?
There's a bit of a racist element there.
It is kind of racist, isn't it?
The only way Africa could develop Western civilization is through aliens giving it to them. And, you know, there's a real irony, too, because the way that the alien civilization reaches Wakanda is through this blue precious metal called vibranium, which allows them to power all of their devices, and it's this really important ore. But Africa already has abundant stores of a blue precious metal that powers electronic devices. It's called cobalt, and Congo sells most of it to China. Africa, the trouble with Africa is not that there aren't natural resources there. Africa is replete with natural resources. Gold, salt, cobalt, right? All of these natural resources. That isn't the issue. And the thing that has allowed parts of it to develop into just, equitable, fair places is the Western civilization that it so decries.
So the other thing I heard was from John Nolte over at Breitbart, the late John Nolte, as we call him here, because he used to be with us. But Nolte said it's a very conservative movie, and the Black Panther is Trump, and what was the other one? Oh, the villain is Black Lives Matter. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, whatever. Sure. I think you can read a little bit of Trump into the protagonist and the antagonist. Okay. It's true that the antagonist, played wonderfully by Michael B. Jordan, the antagonist does want militancy and insurrection of black people against white people, and the protagonist wants more community centers in Oakland. That's fine. But to say that it's a conservative film or that it's promoting some conservative agenda, I think is a stretch too far. But, John Nolte has a little trollishness in him. One aspect of this. A little trollishness, yeah. Because you're right. The whole thing is if aliens intervened and the world were other than it is. Michael B. Jordan's character says, basically, that in society, whites are on top and blacks are oppressed, and we're going to restart the world, and we're going to make it exactly the opposite. And they play on these themes, not just on racial themes, but on intersectional themes in the movie, too, such that all of the great scientists and all of the great soldiers and all of the great race car drivers are women. Oh. Actually, just one woman. Believe it or not, they have one woman who's like this surgeon, scientist, race car driver. They're all of the most fearsome soldiers are women. And you just think, all right, I get it. You're saying, look, what if it were other than it is? But what point is that making other than a tedious and shallow political point?
It is sad how much the left is forced to live in its imagination, which is the only place where leftist policies work, or the world looks. But okay, let's talk about this superhero thing, because I get hit with this all the time, especially by Jacob in the next room. Every time I walk out of here and I've said something nasty about superhero. I find this listen, I'm not against there being superhero movies. I find the number of them, the vast number of them, what's infantilizing.
That is exactly the way to put it. I am being excoriated for saying this. They say, Michael, it's a superhero movie. Come on, stop. You know, I made this point about the movie. One central aspect of it is that the religion of Wakanda doesn't worship a god in whom there is neither Jew nor Greek, nor male nor female, but it just worships the ancestors, which is to say the race. That's all that means.
The regressive progressivism. Yeah.
Exactly, regressive progressivism. And I pointed this out. They say, you're looking too deeply. It's just a superhero movie. Stop it. What's wrong with this? And I'll say, right, that's the problem. These are shallow movies that are meant for children. And they say, oh, you're being an old fuddy-duddy. People can like these things. I say, certainly that's true. We can all eat a little candy every once in a while. There's nothing wrong with that. But the market is totally saturated with these movies. And there's an unhealthy obsession with them among adults. People ask what I like about the superhero movies, and all I can think about are the ones that I watched when I was a kid, because I really liked Batman when I was a kid. But I don't watch Batman things now because I'm not a kid. Now, now I drink whiskey. When I was a kid, I drank less whiskey. Tastes change as you get older.
You know, it's the thing is, if the arts are anything at all, they are the way a nation kind of talks about the things that can't be talked about. And the fact that we are having these debates like about whether Wonder Woman empowers women, of course it doesn't. It's a story about a Greek goddess, you know, that, and it really does bother me that the genre that now obsesses everybody is a genre without tragedy, because there is no heroism without tragedy. I mean, that's why a movie like Logan stands out, because it is a movie about tragedy, and it's a movie actually that comments on the genre. But you know, when you have heroics without tragedy, you have basically no way to talk about the state of the world. Like, there can't be a Muslim villain. There can't be, you know, a villain. People that we really have to deal with are socialist villains, or are they not? You know, I mean, is if somebody who wants to make the world a utopia, is he a villain or is he not a villain? You can't have those questions in these movies, because everybody is just kind of a guy with 8 legs who climbs up a building and ultimately destroys New York.
And it's why, even technically, even as a matter of plot, these movies are so awful, is that there are no stakes whatsoever, except for Logan, where there were stakes. But we all know, you know, I guess this is a spoiler, so if you care, close your ears for 5 seconds, but trust me, you don't care. There's this moment where you know, the main guy is ostensibly going to die. And the way that he's ostensibly going to die is so ludicrous. It leaves such an obvious out for him to come back to life. And we know that all of these Marvel movies follow the same rigid plot structure, that there's no stakes whatsoever. You don't even worry when it's happening. You think, okay, well, I guess I've got 15 minutes until he comes back on and everyone pretends to be surprised. It's so boring as a matter of plot, and it's infantilizing. I wonder if even the children are surprised by these aspects of plot anymore, and what that says about us. We all like a little bubblegum every now and again, but if these are the myths, if these are the stories on which we're seriously discussing cultural matters, it's very sad to see adults who are obsessed with Harry Potter. I don't mind children who are obsessed with Harry Potter. I don't mind adults who have nostalgia and fondness for Harry Potter. But there are more profound ways to think about the questions that these stories are supposed to be answering.
Yeah, and also, by the way, although I have nothing wrong with dreaming about some world where the women are the great warriors and scientists, the fact is these movies are asexual. They are asexual because women don't act like women in them because they have superpowers, and men don't particularly act like men because they have superpowers and don't have to be afraid of anything. Anyway, what are you talking about on your show?
So today I'll be talking to the great Professor Carol Swain. Okay. We're going to have her in. Some people know her. She was in Dinesh's movie, I think is where some people saw her. She is excellent. She was run out of the Academy because she's had that awful, unforgivable sin of being a conservative and a Christian. And we will ask the question, is the Ivy League destroying America?
Yes.
The
so
answer is yes.
Nobody has to watch
you
your
can
show.
Skip right ahead.
Sounds good. All right, Knowles, thanks a lot. I'm sorry you had to go to see this twice.
Me too.
But
I'm
sure
sorry.
It was cosmic justice.
Can you have me report on, like, Boca next week or something, or Hawaii or something?
Yeah, that's exactly. Sending you to Puerto Rico. All right. I'll see you soon.
See ya.